Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Top Producers Nation podcast. This, of course, is the podcast that is made to help agents become top producers in their desired market, no matter where that may be. We also want to help team leaders and brokers develop more top producers in their organizations all over the country. And we do that with all kinds of online resources through topproducersnation.com. As you may know, we're also powered on the local level by the Tampa Bay Real Producers franchise here in beautiful Tampa Bay, Florida, where we feature the top 500 producing agents in the Tampa Bay market. And so we have a special episode here today with a guest that we've actually had on the show before. Some of you might recognize Katrina Madewell, who's going to join us here for another episode here today. And we're going to dive into some other topics that we didn't really get a chance to cover in our first episode together a while back. We've also featured Katrina before in the Tampa Bay Real Producers magazine. You can see that spotlight if you just go to tampabayrealproducers.com, click on issues. You'll see her features in there as you scroll through the different issues that we've had. So Katrina, it's good to have you. How are you?
Hey, thanks for having me back.
No doubt. It's your home that we're hanging out in right now here.
I will tell you, it's way more fun to be the guest than be the host.
I figured it would. Katrina, this is Katrina's studio. And so we wanted to spotlight that as well, because it's a beautiful studio here off of Route 54 in Tampa. You still do your radio show out of here, right?
Still do Tampa Home Talk.
Tampa Home Talk.
13 years.
Yeah, I've been on the radio show about 4 or 5 years ago in this same studio.
Gosh, that
and
was quick.
I know, it did. Too quick, actually. And so we wanted to also plug that idea because as an agent, we're a big fan of helping you create content, right? If we can spotlight your brands and your business and help you find a way to get your voice, Katrina has made it available, I believe, this studio for different agents to utilize and use. And so anything you want to mention about that for people to how to reach you, what they should know about it, anything there?
Well, so I built this studio, I don't know how many years ago, probably 7 or 8 years ago, when I didn't want to drive to the station in St. Pete. It was so far, from Lutz. We're right on 54, just really barely over the county line road. And then when my husband passed away a couple years ago, I took 3 months off. So I decided to revamp the entire studio. So as you know, you didn't even recognize it. It's completely different.
Yep.
So it's really more podcast friendly first and video first and radio second. So we can still do a live remote broadcast if we wanted to, but we're really set up for content and video and production now.
Very cool. Yeah, highly recommend it.
Yeah, if I can give out our number if someone wants to check it out.
Yeah,
you can
go
call
for it.
or text 813-377-2775.
Is that the same number on that sign right there? That's the one.
Did it just for you.
We'll get that in the description for sure. And if you don't already follow Tampa Home Talk, check them out as well. What type of guests and so forth would people experience when they come onto the radio show?
So we're centered very much around the homeowner space. So when I started Tampa Home Talk 13 years ago, the housing market was crashing and nobody was spending any extra money on that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so the goal of the show at that time, and largely still is, to help people keep and maintain great credit, live within their means, build wealth, and talk about stuff in and around the real estate space and housing space. We also highlight and spotlight local businesses and people in the area.
Makes sense. So it's geared more towards the homeowner, the end homeowner, not necessarily the agent-specific demographic.
Well, everybody that may want to buy, sell, or invest in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
We do the market numbers still, which is like real-time information. I hear agents all the time say, oh, we're in a buyer's market, and it's so far from the truth. There's a balanced market in the middle, and if you look at the numbers for Tampa, we're still in a seller's market.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Do you ever have agents on the show with you as well?
I have, yeah. I've highlighted other agents here as well, and we'll do all kinds of funky things. Like one of the ideas I had for a show that we'll do is a show on basically building wealth through investment properties and people that have different types of investment properties. So I would reach out to anybody that has multiple investment properties and share their journey, their story, so that people can understand, the path doesn't always look the way you think it's going to.
Yeah, no doubt. And I know we might have even talked about this a little bit when we had you on the show last time, but when you started the radio show, I believe it was you and Brandon Rhymes, right, who went through some program at the time.
So me, Brandon Rhymes, and Jamie Maloney, which is no longer doing his show, we all came under Real Estate Radio Network. They were the ones that actually approached us. They were out of San Diego. They're no longer around. But they gave us all formal training to be prepared for the air. They helped us set up their brokered airtime and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
And then we kind of like ran on our own. Like Jamie did a show 5 days a week at one point, and I think just got burnt out.
Yeah.
But real estate's still the main focus for myself and Brandon, and we've all been friends since that day we met in San Diego.
Have you found that starting the show has been a real like foundational piece of your overall real estate brand, and how effective has that been in growing the real estate brand?
Yeah, I mean, the people that you meet when you host a show, it opens doors that you wouldn't otherwise have open. I mean,
Absolutely.
I'm sure you've experienced that with real producers.
Yeah. Plus, you get free pizza sometimes too, which works out really well.
Indeed, yeah. But I mean, I've had, I'll give you an example. The PACE loans. That was a topic that we wanted to cover on Tampa Home Talk. And our content comes from questions that we get from consumers, our clients, general things in the field where we like to bring on an expert to talk about that, right? Because sometimes we can answer stuff, but it's always better to get information from the expert. So we had Mike Fasano on, Pasco County tax collector. And when I first reached out to him in his office, we actually wanted to cover PACE. We wanted to talk about the PACE loan because a lot of people were starting to ask me questions about it. I didn't know enough about it, and I wanted to feature, an expert that could talk about it. Turns out he actually didn't like PACE at all because some people were losing their homes because of it. Then they're mad, yelling at the tax collector.
Yeah.
Anyway, we ended up becoming friends. I had him on the show multiple times. He ended up covering PACE one time for 2 hours with me. I've sold his house. So, I mean, it's opened those sorts of doors where I wouldn't have met him if I wasn't doing Tampa Home Talk.
Without a doubt. Yeah, it's a neat thing just to have, like, it obviously puts you in a position of authority so that people look at you a little differently when you have a show and you can invite people onto the show, because at the end of the day, people love to talk about themselves as well. So the show opens those doors. And like you just said, at least for me personally, has also opened up a lot of relationships and opportunities for me to have business doors be open, but also just personal friendships and strength that's involved there. So, which has been great.
Yeah. The one piece, and you can attest to this as well, because a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to start a podcast. And they think, oh, I'm going to buy some equipment. Well, lighting is funny. Sound is funny. There's a whole bunch of things. Yeah. And even aside from that, the consistency is probably the most important piece, because people start it and not be consistent. And that's like the number one thing. If you're going to start a show or something like that, the longevity of it gives you a lot of traction.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's probably the thing that Rob and I, over the years have done the best, is just try to at least have a show every week that is going to go out, is going to get dropped without fail, and that people can rely on that and know that at least there's something there, right? That they're going to see new on a regular basis.
Well, I love it when you highlight other agents, because they're doing something better than me. And there's always a little nugget in there for the person that's talking that, somebody like myself or anybody can take away. Regardless of your production level, there's always good information, I think, in the agents that you highlight. Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And that is the goal, is to always... Anybody who's intentionally looking for that one nugget will find it, right? It's there every single time. But I want to talk a little bit more about you, because I think what's interesting about your conversation and your story in a way is you've been a top producer. Every year that we've had Tampa Bay Real Producers, you've been receiving our magazine. Like I said earlier, you've been featured by us before as a consistent top producer. And I know we were talking off camera about how, and I think this is something that maybe a lot of people can relate to, seasons in life, there's an ebb and flow of things, and things happen, things change. And I know that you had a traumatic experience with your husband passing not that long ago in 2024. And so, of course, that's going to not only affect everything personally, but also affect, professionally, and how you approached your business because of that. So I think it would be cool if people can learn a little bit more about what you went through and how you handled that, and also like what that's looked like since. In the way you've approached your business, and we can definitely pull some lessons from that. So wherever you want to take that, we can go, but I know that's a big question. Well, my husband and I were married for 27 years. We dated for 4.5 years before we got married. I was 20, almost 21 when I met him. He was 54 years old when he passed away. He went into the hospital the day before my 50th birthday. As I mentioned, he went on hospice on my birthday when I turned 50. Happy birthday, yay me. And he died the day after my birthday. And so it was quite a milestone birthday. I was thinking that my 40th, my grandfather, which is like my favorite man in my life beside my husband, he died like right before my 40th, and then my husband dies a day after. So those milestone birthdays is like, I don't think I want to have anymore. You're not looking forward to 60, huh? Yeah. So it was hard. And my husband was sick. So the blessing in that is I had a chance to say goodbye. We had a chance to do a lot of things and prepare, financially, mentally, emotionally, physically, all of it. And so that part I'm grateful for, as opposed to like if it was a car accident and it was sudden. Some
Sure.
people never get the opportunity to say things, or maybe you had a bad day or you had a fight with your spouse.
Totally.
You know, you can't take those days for granted. And, you know, life is very different on the other side of this. I mean, even trying to re-enter the dating world, you have to think the cell phones didn't even exist.
Yeah.
The last time I dated and I was single, and now, you know, people have dating apps. They do stuff very weird. It's a whole different ebb and flow. And I'm like, I don't think I'm cut out for this. I don't even know how to be married, you know? But I ran hard, like all the way up until he passed. He passed at the end of 2024. And
The cancer?
No, he had cirrhosis.
Okay.
So he had it for 7 years. So it was, you know, it was progressive, and you could see those things. And essentially, I still sold a lot. I'd have to go back and look at my numbers, but I want to say in 2024, I still sold 75 or 80 homes, something like that. And then when he passed away, which was early November, I took 3 months off. I just said,
Sure.
I'm not going to do it. So between my virtual team, a couple of the agents that I had, because we're small, we're a tiny little team. We get kind of compared to big groups. We're not. We're small. I took 3 months off. So all of November, pretty much December, and then January was barely coming back. I had some clients holding on, just waiting for me to come back. Then I sort of really came back in February.
That was of 2025.
2025, yeah. And so in 2025, and I traveled a lot. The last part of 2025, when my husband died, I freaked out. I booked a bunch of travel because I was like, I'm going to live with all these regrets. There's all these places I want to go. All I do is work. I don't take enough time off to do things, you know, and I felt guilty, like my husband should have been on these trips with me. So I just booked it. I booked all kinds of stuff. I've been to every continent except for South America.
Wow.
This year, 2026, I was gone almost the entire month of January. Third quarter of last year, I was gone almost the whole quarter of the year. So between the first 2 months of the year, still mourning my husband's passing, and then the last 3 months, I really worked maybe 6 months.
Yeah.
And I still had about 50 transactions, which was
Not too shabby.
Our infrastructure, though, is built for volume. So you either have to rewind that and undo some stuff and scale back, or you got to go back up. And we're at that place where we don't know what direction we want to go yet.
Right. I get that. I want to touch on a couple things that you said. So I could relate when I was telling you off camera, when my father passed away back in 1999, and I was at school at the time at Liberty University. I got to withdraw. I was an only child. And those last 4 months, because he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in September, he passed away in December of 1999. And so I was working at a Duracell factory, as I told you, basically just so I can go visit him when my hours were done with the data entry dumb job. But when I look back upon it now, my dad and I had a challenging relationship because he was very hard on me as a teenager and was very strict with me because he had a little bit of a wild background that I found out about through his sisters, and he didn't want for me to experience a lot of the things that I think he went through.
He was trying to raise you better.
He was. And I was obviously resistant. I was rebellious and all those fun times. But looking back at it, those last 4 months, I really cherish that now when I had the chance, like you said, to kind of like connect, and we knew that the end was coming. It was very clear that the doctors had nothing that they can do at that point. And so I really do appreciate that those months, right?
The conversations
and looking back,
you get to have in that time is different.
Without a
and
doubt.
I'm sure you can relate to that with your dad. You get the chance to say things and do things that you wouldn't do if you didn't know someone was dying. We just don't do that.
Without a doubt. No, it is really something I cherish. And unfortunately, not everybody gets that opportunity, obviously.
Right.
I just literally this past weekend, Valentine's Day weekend, I think that was last weekend, right? My wife and I went to a marriage conference that our church was hosting. And the gentleman who was running it as a pastor up in Michigan, and he was telling a story revolving around the importance of our words, right? And how they, it was like a story behind the power of our emotions and the impact that our words has. So to make a long story short, he was sharing an emotional story about how when he was a kid, I think he was like 12, 13 years old, he got angry with his grandmother, who was his favorite family member outside of his, parents, basically. And for something silly that she had told him to do or whatever, and he got mad at her, and he refused to give her a hug when she was leaving the house right at that time. So he still remembers this, telling it vividly. And she left. They get a call like 2 days later how his grandmother had a stroke, and they obviously went to the hospital to try to see her. And by the time they even got to the hospital, she had already passed away. Mm-hmm. So the emotion that he carried behind with that story of being able to, like, still to this day, and he's now in his 60s, and this was like 40 years ago that this took place. But looking back at it, like, it really was a strong reminder that cherish those times with our loved ones and be intentional about the way that we talk with them, the words that we use. And you just never really know when you don't have that opportunity to really tell them how you really feel, right?
My husband was such a good person, Don. I can remember, like, even, 27 years, you're going to have some fights, right?
Sure.
And he would tell myself and the kids always the same thing. He would say, don't ever go to bed mad.
Yeah.
Don't ever leave the house mad. Even if you're mad, give that person a hug and kiss, even if you're mad.
Yeah.
And you can be mad about it later and talk about it, which you'll be less mad later.
It's wise advice.
But you can imagine how the gentleman you were just speaking about might have felt if he had that thought, or experienced that.
And it's interesting because I know we also mentioned off camera that sometimes things happen to us that dictate the direction of our lives, yes. Right? And for me, when my dad passed, I never would have known that months later I would have gotten this job just because I was home to be with my mom that year. I was the only child, wanted her to not be alone. And so I started getting this job selling Cutco cutlery. That was a summer job, and that led to a 12-year career that eventually led to what I'm doing today because the network all built upon each other to lead to real producers. And then for him, I don't think he would have thought at 12 years old that he'd become a pastor running marriage conferences and teaching people about the power of language and words, and like to really help as many people through his story understand the appreciation of your loved ones, right? But God uses those moments in ways that open up doors, and we should be trying to be aware of when those opportunities arise.
I don't know how long you were there with your mom after you lost your dad, but thinking about that as a mom and the fact that my kids all stayed with me the first week after my husband passed, everybody was there in the house together, and we just spent a lot of time together as a family.
Yeah.
We were all mourning, we were all grieving, like in a fog, but just to have that time together, you really,
it's huge, I'd imagine.
If you have parents and one dies and you're a son or daughter, spend that time with the other parent, because I know I appreciated that. I'll never forget that.
Yeah, no. I think grateful that I was able to spend a full year at home, taking some classes part-time at a local university so I can live with her. And then eventually ended up doing the Cutco thing, like I said, in Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts. That's the first time I left again to go run an office for a while, which opened up a whole other conversation. But
cool. Those little doors that open paths.
It is very true. Yeah, absolutely. And so, that still is rather new for you. We're talking only 2 years now that your husband had passed, and you probably will have a different perspective on it even 5 years from now and 10 years from now that you do now. But did it change in any way the way that you view your business today versus what you were maybe before that happened?
Yeah, I would say it does.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a lot more intentional, I think, in terms of I've always been intentional on who I work with, like if I'm going to work with them or not. But I feel like it gave me a new perspective that life is short, like it's in your face every day. I go to bed by myself. I wake up by myself. I still have things in my room that are his. And it's a constant reminder that he's not there. And so, I just think about how long and how hard and how many hours I would work. And sometimes I still do. And I'm kind of like back there a little bit, which is good for me because there's a weird place in between that you don't want to be, right? From not working to like half in, half out to full throttle. And I think the lesson for me in that is you don't have to be full throttle all the time. You can do a little less and live more and basically live without regrets. Hire another person, do whatever you have to do so that you're doing the stuff you love. You still love what you do and not having regrets. Like for me, time off, that time to write, the time to do different things. I was sharing with you my third book I have coming out. That's all really important to me. And so in this season of life, I plan to be very intentional, whatever direction that looks like, on how that goes. And so I haven't decided yet if that's leading and coaching other agents to do what I've done for years. If it's a combination of both, maybe that transitions into that. I'm not sure, but I can tell you at this stage, 30 some years, literally I've had thousands of transactions, thousands. I don't know how many, well over 1,000. And you
plus had what? If not hundreds, 1,000 plus guests on the show over the years, I would imagine. So the network that has developed.
You just think about life differently, and my husband was young, and we always traveled quite a bit. We would take at least 2 nice trips a year, and sometimes a lot of little weekender 3-4 day trips. And we just never wanted to live with regret. It was a really important thing to both of us that we always talked about when he was here. And so, like I told you, I freaked out when he died and booked all this travel. And we also would, we would go do things internationally or otherwise, and we would see these people that were older, like 60s, 70s, 80s, trying to travel international. And it was really painful to watch them because they're not getting around as well as they would if they were younger. So we always wanted to travel the world and do that stuff while we were young enough to really enjoy it and just be healthy and do whatever we would want to do.
Right.
And then we always said when we get older, we'll do more stateside stuff. We'll do the stuff that, people do maybe earlier in life. Because you're home and it's easy enough to get around and do different things.
Totally.
So for me, it's just about living a life with no regrets, trying to be intentional with my time, being intentional with who I'm around. I mean, the dating pool is a whole you-know-what show. I can't even tell you.
Are you back in that pool now, Katrina?
I am, but I'll tell you, like the dates I've been on, there's almost no second date. Like 95+% of the time, there's no second date.
I can't imagine
It's a different animal. It's the Wild West out there.
How long were you married again?
27 years, and we were together for 32.
Gotcha.
A long time.
That's got to be a shock. Just
it was
starting from scratch again.
Is.
Yeah,
it's still shock.
I can imagine.
And honestly, I probably started dating before I was ready. I kind of made myself. I kind of like shoved myself out there. Like I remember, like after the date, thinking, well, I was telling myself, just go do it. Just go do it. It's just a date. Just make yourself go, you know? And then I remember.
No regrets, right?
When I got done, I was like, man, I'm so glad that's done. Like thinking like, oh, I finally did it. I went on a date with someone else.
Maybe that would be the one area you would have some regrets is who you select for these different dates, I guess.
It's the generation now is so different, you know? That
is it online? Is that where you're meeting these guys?
Is it what?
Is it online? Is that where you're meeting these guys?
Mostly online, but I don't know how people meet people other than through the same circles. I probably should just do more stuff and not talk to anybody online. Really. Just delete all the apps, start over, burn it down and start over.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you also mentioned before off camera that you've been very focused on health, right? Yeah. And whether that's gym time, maybe there's guys to meet there, I don't know, at the gym or not. I know that there's always a weird feeling at the gym, I think, about, now I'm married, so I'm not approaching any women to have these conversations anyway at the gym, but you always hear about like, a woman doesn't want to be approached at the gym anyway, so I think guys have that in their head. It's to not try to initiate from that conversation standpoint. But you want to talk about the movement you've been on with health and why that's been so important to you?
To answer your question, I think it would depend on the approach, but I also go at 7 a.m. where I'm like rolling out of bed, no makeup. I'm like, I'm there to get my workout on and get out of there.
Dating's not the first thing on your mind.
I went to a wedding like 2 months ago and they met at the gym.
Is that right?
Yeah, so
I get it. It makes sense.
I feel like the people
you see people conversating, so it does happen.
I feel like the people that meet in the gym meet in the afternoons, and I don't go to the gym in the afternoons.
There you go.
I'm always like, the couple times I went in the afternoon, I'll see like my niece or my niece's husband, and they'll go, "Oh, what are you doing here? You're never here in the afternoon." I'm like, I know, but it's probably because I didn't get my standard days in during the week, so I'm like, all right, let me go Saturday real quick, and it's like late morning, early afternoon.
That would be a good survey. Like, what's the peak dating time when you think about the gym? Is it afternoons? Is it evening? Is it morning?
Guarantee it's late.
I'm assuming it's a different pool every time, depending on the time of day that you would partake.
It has to be the night owls. It has to be.
You would think so?
Yeah.
Well, not people after work.
But then you got like the after work and even like the young crowd after school that would be hitting it up, I would think, right? Hey guys, just want to take a quick second here during this episode to explain that if you're somebody who would love to work with the top 500 producing agents in Tampa Bay, just like the one that you see right now during this actual interview, all you'd have to do to learn more about that is go to apply, APPLY, TampaBayRealProducers.com, and you'll see an application there to actually apply to become a preferred partner for the top 500 producing agents here in the Tampa Bay market. We work with some of the best lenders, title companies, home inspectors, different industries, 25 different industries represented right now. You can actually see the full list of them at TampaBayRealProducers.com. Click on partners at the top, and you will see all of our existing partners in this particular franchise here locally. So if that interests you and you would love to work more closely with these top producing agents, you can find that application actually right on our website at TampaBayRealProducers.com. But if you want to go directly to the application, just put the words apply, APPLY, and then Tampa Bay Real Producers. We'll put that link as well in the description. Let's go ahead and get back to the episode.
So to answer your question about my journey, 2.5 years ago, I started this. So my doctor wanted to put me on blood pressure medication. And I was like, what? No, I'm not taking this. So I kind of fought back and I said, I'm overweight. My feet hurt. I have plantar fasciitis. I need to get in better health. I need to get back to the gym. I need to change my life. And so I was a size 14, almost a size 16.
Was this before or after your husband passed?
Before. It was before. And we would work out a lot together too. So he was a great, like when I didn't feel like going, he would make me go and vice versa. We did that for years. Yeah. He was the best workout partner ever. And the interesting thing is, you know, it's not been quick. It's been a 2.5-year journey, 80 pounds, multiple sizes. I'm down to a size 4. And I changed a lot of stuff. It wasn't one thing. It was a bunch of things over time. So I started back at the gym 1 day a week with a trainer because that accountability piece is so big. Yep. Now I have and I added a day, you know, when I added my 3rd day with my trainer, it was supposed to be a girls' fun day with my friends. My trainer agreed anybody that wanted to come could come, and it would just be a fun gym day where we get some workout on. Well, you know, I was the last Mohican standing. I was like, all right, I'm not going to take away this day. It's already in my schedule. I'm not going to take it out. So I have 3 days a week with my trainer, which is usually weights and that sort of stuff. And I try to do yoga and Pilates on the other days in between. So I minimum probably 4 times a week I'm at the gym, as much as 6, but usually like 4 or 5 times a week. And I do it early for I'm too tired to have that excuse that I can't go. I'm
assuming nutrition, like the whole diet change has been a big part of this as well, right?
You know, as agents, we're busy all the time. We're in the car. We eat food out of a bag from a fast food joint, like all the time. Yeah. And you're starving. You don't meal prep or food prep. I didn't like to eat in the morning. And so I did a lot of those things. So no fast food, pretty much. I never ate a lot of sugar anyway, but I really eat no sugar. Carbs. I cut the carbs a lot. I added in more protein instead of skipping meals. And then I'm so hungry, I'm binging at 1 or 2 in the afternoon for whatever's the closest fast food restaurant on the way to the next appointment. I don't do that anymore. Yep. So I added in, and again, guests from my show, right? I had someone come in and talk about the GLP-1 shot. And the question I asked her was, what if you could tell anybody one thing, what's the one thing that would help someone that's trying to, like, you know, help them on this journey, speed up their metabolism, whatever. And she says, don't skip meals. She said, even if you add in a protein shake, don't skip meals. So I took that advice, and I feel like it kind of pushed me the rest of the way through my journey where I was trying to go. Yeah. But it was all the things. It was the workouts. Do you prep now?
Is there a meal prep part of your planning for the week?
Not a lot, no, because I've never been a morning eater, so I always will have a protein shake in the morning, and I'll usually have 1 or 2 protein shakes. I still pretty much eat like once a day, maybe twice a day, but I also cut my portions back. So my portions are really small. And I tell people, like, instead of just eating anyway to finish your food when I'm full, I stop eating, right? You saw that earlier. Like, I actually ate a whole huge piece of pizza.
Had the 1 or 2 bites of pizza, you were good to go.
And Pat George was here, and I really want to try the other one. I literally had, I think, 1.5 bites, and you guys are like, have more. And I'm like, no, I'm done. I'm full. So when my stomach's full, I stop eating. I listen to that. I don't eat anymore. I don't stuff anymore.
Yeah, I didn't take that advice. I just went ahead and finished that last slice.
Again, that was one little thing among many. So it's like adding in more foods and or protein shakes.
Totally.
Eating smaller portions. I mean, I had to redo a couple weekends ago. I went through my entire closet. I had to take everything out of there because I was still trying to wear the same clothes, to where my friends were making fun of me. They're like, you can't wear these clothes anymore, Katrina. They do not look good. You look dumpy. I'm like, all right, fine.
Especially if you're going to be out there on the dating field. You know, we got to get a whole new wardrobe at this point.
I mean, I was buying, I can't even believe still that I bought a size 4 jeans. It's like surreal, really. It's like.
It must feel great, though.
It is. I haven't been a 4 since I met my husband 30 years ago.
That's awesome. Do you run?
I used to run a lot more than I do now. So not as much. No, it's mostly like weights and yoga, Pilates.
Is there cardio stuff there at the gym? Yeah.
But I used to do a lot of walk, run, jog. But when the plantar fasciitis started bothering my feet, I stopped running. Yeah. And so I could probably incorporate it again, and I should. Like on one of those off days, I should do a little run, take my husky for a run. He'd like that.
Which gym do you go to?
Crunch.
Okay. I'm a member at EOS down here on 54. And so our routine has been, I've gotten consistently going 3 times a week now at EOS. And so I usually work out for an hour, but then I really like, they have a cryo room in there. So I'll sit in the cryo chair for about, well, the first thing I do after the hour weightlifting is I'll do 20 minutes on cardio, usually a Stairmaster thing. Then they have 20 minutes on the cryo room. I'll sit in the chair and do the 20-minute cryo. There's a whole metrics that you go through. And then the last 20 minutes is my favorite, is the sauna. Okay. The sauna, I actually never really was big on the sauna at all, but I watched a Tony Robbins thing one time. He wrote the book called Life Force. If you've ever read that, it's all about health. It's like a 600-page Bible on health. if you ever want to check that out.
What Tony Robbins book isn't over 600 pages?
Well, this one, yeah, true. He's got a couple of those.
I haven't read it.
He's got a couple mammoths. Yeah, it's one of his more recent books. It's called Life Force, which I actually now also invest in the Life Force program. I can mention that as well. But the book is like all these modern technologies of every major illness in America, right? From cancer to diabetes to heart disease, like all these different organic food advice and also just like treatments and things that they've done in other parts of the world that are not FDA approved yet here in America that they've seen work really well. And so it's a very informational and educational book on all of these different modern day treatments. But in the book, he talks a lot about the power of a sauna, right? And I never really took the time to like educate myself on that before, but there was one thing that stood out to me where if you literally just sit in a sauna for 20 minutes, a minimum of 3 times a week, it reduces your cardiovascular risk by like 75%. Like something crazy like that.
Maybe I shouldn't skip the sauna at the gym is what
I'm I was going to say, you might want to throw that into the routine. And I love ending it that way because, I mean, it's just a way to kind of like recover, relax.
Yeah.
You know, you leave feeling great. It's basically like a whole other cardio workout. And the more research you really do on it, you realize the positive benefits that it has.
So 20 minutes.
I would encourage you to throw that in there. 20 minutes in the sauna, you'll love it. You'll be grateful that you did. Three times a week is the goal.
Yeah. So Crunch they have the cryo beds. Is it a cryo tank you're in or the cryo beds?
No, it's a bed. Yeah.
So they have the cryo beds. They have the massage chairs and the hydro beds.
Yeah. They don't have the hydro ones there. It's really just like a cryo chair.
Yeah.
Is what it is.
They have that at Crunch. I love the hydro beds though.
Yeah. Love it. They don't have those there. They do have massage rooms there, which I occasionally will use, but I don't use that very often. But EOS has everything. I mean, but it's also crazy busy over there. There's probably, I don't even know how many members they have, but finding parking is the hardest part of the whole thing, you know? Yeah, it's insane. I wanted to, we'll maybe go back to the health thing in a second. Well, the Life Force thing I mentioned, just to throw it out there. They have a membership program now where they will come to your house there's 2 options. You can either do it where it's twice a year or you can do it every 3 months. And they'll just do all your blood work right from your home. They give you like a biometrics reading, like 55 different biometrics that you log into your account, and it's all printed out for you there, and it tells you certain advice based on your blood work.
That's smart.
Of what they'd recommend.
Wow.
Yeah, so I started doing that about, I guess, 2 years now, I want to say I've been on that. So that's been an eye-opener as well, and kind of highlighting anything that needed to be. My cholesterol level was a little high on one of the readings, so that was something that kind of at least brought me some awareness that I wouldn't have even known about, right? And so you can do these different nutritional calls. They have coaches that they plug in if you wanted to do a Zoom call with one. So, and it's not a very costly program. It's very affordable. It's less than $200 a month, I think, for someone to do it.
Somebody mentioned a book to me years ago called Eat Right for Your Blood Type. And I wonder if there's an element of that in it where they're taking your blood work and, building the nutrition piece based on that.
Yeah, I know Tony's like one of the big founders of this Life Force program, and he's got a bunch of other doctors from all over the globe that I think initially invested in it.
I love that.
But yeah, lifeforce.com I think is where you can check it out. If anybody wants to be healthy out there, go ahead. I wanted to ask you this. So we were talking earlier about grief, right? And a lot of people talk about when you have a major loss, like, when's the hardest time? And I was curious as we go through your journey a little bit. You mentioned earlier that you had your kids hang around with you for at least a week or 2 after, and that was very helpful and something that you remember. Was there a moment that you can think of that was like, this was the hardest time for me to get through? Was it a month later? Was it 6 months later? Was there anything that comes to mind that really felt like that stands out to me?
A couple of things I'll mention because I had started the show Live, Love, Lost with Jason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to bring that up next, the podcast.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot on the show where everybody is there and then nobody is there. And I would say that's probably one of the hardest is when it feels like nobody is there. Now, my younger 2 kids, which are both adults, were still with me. So my youngest daughter had just turned 18 years old. And, they were all still at home. So it helped having them there. And for me, like as I think back, because this is now year 2 of everything. So the first year, I feel like you're in shock. Everything is different. It's like a shock to your system that you don't wake up next to that person every day. You don't talk to them about, hey, what are we going to get from the grocery store? What are we doing Friday night? Or, they're just like your side-by-side person that you do everything with. And then the second year, it's real. So the first year you're in shock, and the second year it's just real. Like that
your new
person's
reality,
not there. Yeah. And so I would say it's the hardest part. And I just look at my own journey and I think about other people I've talked to. I think the one mistake that people should consider not making is find your new life, because you have to figure out who you were before that person and then keep busy. So keeping busy really, really helped me. I kind of like immersed myself into crew life, actually in 2 crews this year, which I can't do next year. It's too much. And there's always something going on. They're super social, but that's helped keep busy. And I'll tell you, the first time I really had a chance to slow down and not be busy, because I've been so busy since like the day he died. It's almost like a coping mechanism. And I went on this cruise. I did Mombasa to Mumbai in January of this year. And it was a 14-day cruise, and I had land time on both sides.
Did you go with anybody or by yourself?
Was totally by myself. It was my first time solo, single traveling.
I love that.
Being gone that long, you can imagine the age demographic was a lot older than me. So that was a little interesting. But that was the first time I think I had a huge breakdown in a while, in 2 years. And so I had
just feeling lonely, or what was the emotion?
I had checked into my hotel, the cabin that I was staying in, and it was beautiful. I mean, it was like I had a butler. I had never had that before. It was just an incredibly beautiful room. It was a beautiful ship. Everything was amazing. The food was good. Everything was fantastic. But it was something about checking into the room, and I check in, and you unpack your stuff, and you sit there for a minute, and you just see the bottle of champagne chilling and the 2 glasses, and you realize I'm by myself.
Yeah.
And I just started crying. I just started crying. I couldn't stop. And I didn't even go to dinner that night. I don't even think I ate. I think I just went to bed. And then I had missed the solo and single travelers meetup, which is important if you're going to solo travel, especially on a ship. That's when you meet other people and kind of do stuff as much or as little as you want with them. And so that was kind of hard. And then I got in this trap where I was just working on the ship, and I still didn't leave. I missed formal night, the second night on the ship. I just didn't want to go. I didn't feel like getting dressed, so I didn't do it. I ordered room service and stayed in the room. And then the third night, I said, okay, Katrina, you got to go. Get up, go out, go meet some people. There's probably a table in the restaurant for dinner where other people are also solo traveling, But you just see everybody coupled up,
Yeah.
Every who doesn't go on a cruise together as a couple, right?
Sure.
Or a bunch of girlfriends. But I'll tell you the interesting thing, there was 2 guys solo traveling. There was a lot of single solo women traveling. All the women I met were all older than me, and they were all widows except for one. She was a divorcee. And I thought, gosh, women seem to be okay doing stuff more alone than men. So that was like a weird awareness that I had. But I'll get moments like that. I think everybody does, and doing this in real estate. When he died, I knew right away one of the first things I had to do, like while you're still in this fog and shock, was I cleaned out his closet, pretty much got rid of most of his clothes, or at least pulled him out of the closet and put him aside for the kids to go through some things and that. And I still have some stuff to get rid of. But that's one of the hardest things, like being in real estate. When we go to sell a property and someone's passed away, sometimes the clothes are in there for years and people can't touch them.
They don't want to face it. Yeah.
And we have to end up doing it as agents. And so I knew that was a reality for a lot of people. So I did it quick while I was in shock. And I'm glad that I did that. Because those things are hard. You start doing that, and every time you turn around, there's more things you need to go through. And it's surreal going through someone's entire belongings, everything. I'm sure there's things that your wife has that you've never touched at or
totally.
Looked
the memories come flooding back, and the smells and everything.
Yes,
I totally get that. I appreciate you sharing that story. That was powerful about your experience there on the cruise, and I think it's cool that you just decided to go, number one, and just make a decision to actually go, even if it was by yourself. And I think that sometimes there's a lot of power. I love like going certain places just on my own, right?
I do too, but that was a different animal.
Totally. That's a different mindset entirely. And so the experience was very powerful. I'm curious the motivation you had in when you decided to start the podcast with Jason, specifically revolving around grief, right?
Yeah.
I know that obviously we're talking about your story here. I know Jason, if you guys know, Jason McIntosh also has some stories that I'm sure you may or may not be familiar with if you follow any of his content, because he puts a lot of content out as well. But was your intent, I'll just ask you, like, number one, what was your intent? I'm curious if it was specifically to try to reach as many people who also were grieving, and if that was a motivation for you, or was it more of just an outlet for you to kind of like talk through some of the emotions and things that you were experiencing. What was your focus and intention there?
So I'll give you an idea of some of my own awarenesses and shortcomings, if you will. And that was a big part of it. And the part that really kind of launched it and said, yeah, we're going to do this, because Jason has also radio and podcast background, was I told you I took 3 months off. So I stopped everything, even radio. I stopped Tampa Home Talk. I pulled my contract from the station until I was ready to go back. And that was 3 months. And I was thinking about going back, and I tried to renegotiate my contract, and they just weren't giving me really what I wanted. And I said, you know what? Radio's changing. Why don't I just make this more podcast first? And then it's not so on demand. I could do it like on my terms. I don't have to be there right at 9 a.m. every Friday. So it was on my quest to change my studio into podcast first, radio second, versus the other way around, because we would air it live and then just throw it on a podcast. Very different. That I met Rob, which our studio, as you know, you didn't even recognize it, has undergone a lot of changes.
Yep.
So in making those changes, I decided just to put the money into the studio here to, make the video, camera, lighting, like all the stuff better, instead of spending the money on airtime. And so in my quest to do that and revamp my studio, I had talked to you, and you said, well, talk to Jason, because he's got a studio too. Because I was trying to figure out some logistics. I don't know. I'm a real estate broker.
Yeah.
So Rob helped me so much, like get everything tweaked and and it's like we're still tweaking some stuff. But it was in that quest and talking to Jason just on the phone that we're like, gosh, this is a lot. Like, we need to have lunch. This has been a cool conversation. We're both busy. We got to run. So him and I went and we had lunch at the Tampa Club. And we're sitting there talking and going back and forth. And it was like almost at the same time, we were like, this is a show. This is content. This is a podcast or something, because everything we're talking about is like people would totally listen to this. And I don't know if it's like other people were listening to us, but like at the same time, we had this little inclination. And to answer your question full circle, when I think about why I did it, other than, hey, this is great content, it's because I was thinking about the way that I showed up for other people, clients, other people I know that have had a death or a loss. And I was thinking about the way that I showed up compared to how I felt now as a widow, and just sort of some of those experiences. And I realized through listening to, I saw an interview with Oprah and Sarah, whatever her last name is. She was the CEO of Facebook.
Blakely, I think.
No, Sarah Blakely's a Spanx girl. She was close, though. Anyway,
one of those boss babes.
Yeah. Her husband and her were on a trip in Mexico, and she had young kids. And her husband ended up passing away at the gym, and they were like looking for him. The other couples, they were there, and they went back and found him, and he was gone. So her husband was really young, like in his 40s, I think, young 40s, and died. And so I was listening to this whole interview that Oprah did, which one of my doctors had recommended. And the book prompted me the podcast interview with Oprah prompted me to read her book, which is called Option B. And Option B is about, she would talk about how like her kids were playing a game and the dad was always this particular piece, right? If you're playing Monopoly or something and someone's always the hat. And her son and daughter were arguing about it. And he said, well, you can't be the hat because dad's always the hat. And she was like, no, he can. We have to take our life back. And, dad's not here. So option B is this, right? And she talked about even dating. And I remember listening to her story where she was talking about how their culture at Facebook and how they're, it's about the connecting to the people, right? Everything we do on Facebook, we catch up with people, all of that. And how people treated her when she came back to work after her husband died. She said people wouldn't look at her. They wouldn't talk to her. They would avoid her. And they always had this super open culture, and it just felt really weird because people were avoiding her. And then when they did talk to her, they would never bring up her husband or say his name.
Right.
And, and
walking on eggshells all around.
Well,
her,
I looked at that.
Is that Sarah Wynne Williams?
No.
I
think I know what you're talking about.
Her name was Sarah for sure. She is or was the CEO of Facebook.
Yeah.
But I was listening to that story and I realized I'm that person. I was that person that avoided death, not talking about it. I wouldn't bring it up at any cost. If I had a dear client of mine that I saw on Facebook that someone passed away, I wouldn't even call them because I just didn't know what to say. And I didn't want to say the wrong thing and I didn't want to make them cry. And I think this whole experience for me in my widowhood journey, right, and the podcast was talking about how to be a better person on the other side of grief. And so that was a lesson that I think God was trying to teach me in that. And so in the podcast, the reason why it was hopes to give people the peace that they need when they're grieving or have a major loss.
Yeah.
And so in some of the episodes, we talk about the 7 stages of grief. We talk about dating afterward. We've talked about a lot of stuff in the almost 20 episodes we did. And so the goal of that show was to give the person listening that's experiencing grief a piece that they needed, whether it was that show or a different show at the time, because it's different, right?
Totally.
And the people, I don't think people realize how much everybody's there, and it's too much in the beginning. Everyone's calling and texting, and you're overwhelmed. Like your nervous system shuts down.
Right.
And it's not that you're trying to be rude. You just can't physically facilitate. In my case, it was probably 400 or 500 phone calls, text messages. I appreciated the cards because I could open those at my own leisure and look at them. And then the people that checked on me later, and then people that sent food later, like a week or 2 later, that was really important, because that's when people forget and they go back to their own life and they do their own thing. That's probably when your friends or family or whoever that's had loss needs you the most.
A lot of great value there. I think, by the way, her name was Cheryl.
Yeah.
Cheryl
that's
Sandberg,
it. I had it wrong. What
That's
did I
what
say,
it was.
Sarah?
Cheryl. Close
Yeah,
enough.
so close.
Cheryl Sandberg.
I remember watching that interview, though, now that you bring it up, and her talking about her experience of losing her husband.
Yeah, her book is Option B, Facing Adversity, Building Resilience, and Finding Joy.
Yeah. And
That's
it's
right.
hard. It's hard to find that joy when you've lost your life. You know,
Yeah.
your spouse of 3 decades, that was your life. Like
Totally.
you're part of each other, you're intertwined. And now life is different, and it's never going to be normal. It's never going to be the same. It's never going to be what it was.
Yeah.
You just have to figure out what your new life looks like in your chapter 2, because that's what it is.
Well, I applaud you for doing this. What'd you do? 18 episodes so far, you said?
Was it 18, 19, 20? Yeah.
Yeah. I think, it's one of those things that I think a lot of people are very, whether the word's afraid or just sensitive to even want to talk about, right? Because they don't want to come across insensitive to somebody either that they love or someone that they respect or care about. But I think a lot of times that's usually when that person probably needs it the most is for someone to actually just have a real conversation, right, with them and be willing to be real and genuine and ask the poignant questions that somebody probably does want to get off their chest, or at least have somebody to listen to or listen to them, right?
I remember a conversation I had with a past client. It's a husband and wife, and I'm friends with them, and they've been clients for years. And they lost their daughter back in, I think, 2020. And I remember doing that whole avoidance thing too. And I was like, I'm so glad I didn't see it or know, because I wouldn't have known what to say. And I watched them chase happiness. I mean, we sold multiple properties with them just trying to find happiness. And I had a call from him after Chris passed away, because they knew my husband. We would, reconnect outside of real estate. So him and his wife both knew Chris. And I remember what he said to me. And he literally said, Katrina, and he started crying on the phone. He said, whatever you do, he goes, don't do what Chris and I did. He goes, we lost 10 years of our life grieving because we didn't want to get out of bed. He said, don't do that. I can't get that decade of my life back. And I said, I know. And your daughter, Nicole, would never have wanted you to do that. And I knew that, And having the conversation at that time, it really meant a lot. And if you have a friend or someone that's lost someone, they might need to hear that. They might need to say, I don't care that you don't feel like getting out of bed. Let's go do something. You can go home when you're ready, but we're getting out right now, you know? And even I think about my trainer. I had him, before my husband, and he gave me a lot of grace, of course, when my husband passed away, but he didn't let me use it as an excuse. So I think it was a couple weeks had went by, and the 3rd week he was like, all right, I know it's hard. I know you're still grieving. Doesn't matter. Get up, get to the gym.
Yeah.
Come. You're going to feel better when you leave. You know you will.
Sometimes you need that tough love.
It's the person that's willing to just push you and let you get mad at them because you're making them do something they don't want to do because they're in grief. But they'll be happy that you did, afterward. I would say most people will be happy that you pushed them to do something they didn't want to do.
Totally. Yeah, interesting hearing you talk about this and the way that you've responded to obviously a very, a tragedy in your own personal life. You could reach so many people, right, with the message and how to be able to influence them, not only through your podcast and the work that you do. And I know that you have, you've always had a trait of wanting to be a leader and coaching and supporting and developing and, helping other people grow personally and professionally. And I know you love real estate, but have you ever thought about using like literally building a platform around this topic and this message and being
Like grief coaching?
being an influencer in this space?
I've thought about it. And the truth is I'm just the beginning of my chapter 2. I don't know what that looks like.
Yeah.
I don't know. But going back to what you said earlier, I'm going to let God open those doors and let me meet the people I need to meet to walk down whatever path that is. I'm going to be open to that.
Yeah.
And I know you believe in the power of prayer. And, my husband and I had closed on a construction loan, and we were supposed to build this really big house, like probably 3 or 4 years ago. And I remember we had such a hard time getting the permits done. It just felt like we kept running into obstacle after obstacle. And I felt like I was pushing and the contractors weren't pushing hard enough. And so I remember just praying about it. It was like early October. And I said, God, I'm not supposed to build this house. I need you to tell me. Like, you got to show me in a way. It's a sign that I won't miss so that I know what I'm supposed to do. And I need you to show me by the end of the month. And I did.
I need a deadline, God. Come on.
Well, because, sometimes we're a little dumb. We don't know how to get out of our own way. At least I'm
He's a
speaking for
timely
myself.
man.
Speaking for myself. And on Halloween, October 31st,
Last day of the month.
my husband lost his job after 32 years. He was fired.
Wow.
And I mean, it's just, and it was an unjust firing, but I had been trying to get him to leave because
You're the
he
one who
already-
asked for the sign.
I asked for it. And and looking back, I'm thankful for it. I'm glad. I pray all the time, like, thank you for not letting me
Was
build
your
that
husband
house.
happy about that prayer?
Yeah. I mean, I think he was upset about his job, but I had been trying to get him to go because his health was
Sure.
declining and he really needed to have that time for himself, and he just didn't want to do it. He didn't want to leave.
Yeah, it's always a powerful moment when you can see that God's slapping you across the face with something, right?
So I took it for what it was, and then I later was thankful for it. I mean, there's been a lot of big lessons like that I couldn't understand why I was dealing with that in the moment, but then later I look back and say, thank you, God, especially for protecting me from myself,
Totally.
So
I feel like we have a lot to talk, but I want to put a bow on our episode as we get closer here to our time. And I don't really know exactly what direction I want to go to end the episode the way we normally would do, but I know I'm going to challenge anyone who's watching live in a minute with taking action. And there's many things you can take action on based on this conversation. But the word that I keep landing back on as I think about the episode is like just appreciation, right? I feel like there's an appreciation for the tragedies that happen in our lives. And even though they're not easy to go through, most of the time, I really believe everything happens for a very good reason. And when we take a step back, even if it's a loss of a loved one that many times in the moment we can't understand, there's usually a bigger purpose. I believe in faith, obviously. I believe there's a higher purpose behind everything. And ultimately, I think God has already proven he's using you in this way to reach people through I would encourage you to continue the podcast and keep putting that content out there because it's a needed content that you really don't hear a lot of. And I think people need that as they go through those moments. So I think you'll end up reaching more people than you probably realize with your story. And then I know that you love your business. And so it seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, that even since the passing of your husband, your business is still successful. Obviously, it has changed in certain ways, but you've also, to me, seems like you have maybe even a deeper appreciation for the real estate business and how that has played a role in your life. Is that true?
I think appreciation and gratitude go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And I have so much gratitude for so many things. The time I have with my husband at the end, the fact that I got our money right when we were younger and was a saver and, really like they say, make hay while the sun is shining, save for a rainy day. We did that. And so I was able to, take care of our family when you're married till death do us part. And that includes my husband when he was sick, even without his income. And so, agents can make a lot of money. We can also spend a lot of money. So I would say the little piece that I probably need to leave with the person listening is don't take anything for granted. Appreciate everything you have and save. If you save just 10% of your income for wealth building, you'll be in a position way different than anyone else.
That's great advice.
A lot of that came from the richest man in Babylon. And if it's okay with you, I would love to just mention the book I'll drop this year, my third book.
Of course. I was going to mention that. I was going to ask next about the journaling.
Yeah, I don't have a title on that yet, but to piggyback on that, what a lot of people get from counseling, after grief, I feel like I got from writing. So you can go back and look through some of my journal pages, and anger is one of the 7 stages of grief. And you can see where I'm writing so hard on the page that I rip it with the pen.
Wow.
And like big, bold scribbles, but that kind of stuff helped me. It helped me get a lot of that stuff out. And so it was between that, finishing this 5-year journal, wanting some better, deeper questions, and then a conversation Jason and I had when we were cutting an episode. And Rob, you might remember better than me how the conversation went, but I was talking about, how a lot of people did the 100 days of gratitude. Remember, like several years back, I did that. And if you do that and you don't miss a day and you can't duplicate anything, you really start thinking about things differently. And so I decided in that conversation with him, I'm going to do a gratitude journal that has a question a day, every day, that's relative for the day that it's on. And I got all the questions written out last year and didn't drop the book. And I was so mad that it wasn't done. And then I look back and I realized through this private work group that I've been doing, people don't know how to write. They don't know how to write like me, and they need help with that. So I realized I probably need to launch the book, but I also need a workbook at the same time. And so the gratitude journal is meant to help you think, look about things in a different way, like give you a different perspective, and also help you find gratitude in the simple things that maybe you wouldn't have looked for gratitude in.
I love it. When's that going to come out? You know yet?
It'll be this year for sure. I'm thinking by third quarter.
Is it ebook? It's going to be print, both?
It'll be definitely print. I'll make sure it's an ebook, and I want to make sure I get the Audible done, which I have yet to do for my first book. So I'll probably try to do those both at the same time.
Yeah, I was telling you earlier that I feel like there's Hal Elrod is a friend of mine who wrote the book, The Miracle Morning.
Yes.
And he talks about in that book, if you understand his framework, he teaches something called the Savers method, right? And one of those stands for scribing, fancy word for journaling.
Right.
And so he talks about how that one of that piece of the framework seems to be the one that a lot of people intend to want to do, but they really get caught up on the mechanics of it, their own head. They need some right prompts. And so I think your book, again, is going to fill a huge need there to help a lot of people get out their story, get out the things that they're truly grateful for. And it also reminds me of another friend of mine who wrote a book called, he has branded himself Mr. Thank You. His name is John Israel. He actually spoke at one of our panels for Real Producers about a year ago at Whiskey Cake. And he travels now all over the world speaking to mostly companies and different events and conferences, telling a story about how for a year, based on a challenge from a friend, he wrote a thank you note to anyone in his life, family, friends, clients, whoever. But he did it for 365 days in a row. And the stories that came out of that, right, from writing these thank you notes, handwritten thank you notes, became his entire story, his entire brand called Mr. Thank You. So it is amazing how when we practice gratitude intentionally, how much it really influences other people, but at the same time truly influences and impacts ourselves, and it really allows us to see our best version, I think, of ourselves in many ways.
It breeds contentment, right?
Totally.
Where people always want more. I think gratitude truly breeds contentment.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
There's a lot to be said for that.
Well, I'm glad that we were able to have you on the show today. You know, it's nice to be the guest in your own house, isn't it?
It's nice to be the guest, period.
And we are very appreciative that you're allowing us to use your studio for future Real Producers here in Tampa Bay, who I'm sure will be coming in here and joining us on Fridays for future episodes. So I'm sure you'll be seeing Katrina here many times on Fridays. And I can't promise you free pizza, but you never know if you hang out here long enough. I always like to end every episode with a call to action to the audience, whether you're watching live on Facebook or you're on YouTube or you're listening in on Apple, Spotify, any of the different podcast platforms that we're on. As a reminder, if you don't subscribe already to our show, just click the little button below. That way you'll be notified every time we drop a new episode. But this episode was a little bit different than our traditional episodes, as you might know if you follow us with our interviews of agents. I love the fact that we can talk to somebody who we've had on the show before and now have a completely different conversation and angle about something that is highly relevant that she's gone through, and not only how it affected her business, but also, of course, the way that she's responded to that with influencing others and allowing herself to just give in a way that I think is really showing itself not only through her podcast, but in everything she's been producing since. And so maybe there was something there that resonated with you. Maybe you're even somebody who's experienced some grief recently or know somebody who has. or it's just trying to like think of a way to even like reinvent yourself. Maybe that's on the health front that you heard Katrina talk about before. But what's that one thing that you can take action on that will help improve personally or professionally your experience, your life, so that you become a better version of yourself that you can take from this episode and lock it in so that you start building that momentum to become the best version that you want to be. Follow us if you want at topproducersnation.com to learn more about how to be a top producer in your desired market. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Top Producers Nation podcast.